Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, the podcast where we, decode books, right? We take a look at all those interesting ideas and we pick out the best bits. And today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Alonement by Francesca Specter. And this book, it's all about being single, but not in that, sad and lonely way.
It's not about, waiting for Prince Charming or anything.
Exactly. It's about actually really owning it, really enjoying it and embracing being single.
Yeah, and I think that's so refreshing because, so often singlehood is seen as this, temporary state or even a problem that needs fixing.
Oh, I know, right? When are you going to settle down? When are you going to find someone? Ugh.
Exactly. But Specter just flips that whole script. She's like, nope, being single can be amazing.
Totally. And she actually talks about how even on a societal level, there's this pressure to be in a relationship. Data actually shows that more and more people are choosing to be single these days.
Yeah.
But it's society hasn't quite caught up yet.
Yeah, and it's not just about those, annoying comments from relatives.
Oh, those can be the worst.
I know, right? But Specter actually talks about how even governmental policies can sometimes overlook the needs of single people. For example, she talks about housing policies that often favor families or couples. So it can be harder for single people to find affordable housing. She shares this really powerful story about a woman named Kylie Noble. And she had, so much trouble finding housing because she had autism and a low income.
Right. And it's that just makes everything so much harder.
Exactly. It shows how being single can have a real impact on your finances, too.
Absolutely. And actually, speaking of finances, didn't Specter mention that single people spend a way higher percentage of their income compared to couples?
Yeah, she cites a statistic that single people spend a whopping 92% of their disposable income compared to 83% for couples.
Oh, that's a huge difference.
It is, right. And especially when you factor in things like, rising housing costs and not having a partner to split those expenses with.
It makes you wonder, are we really doing enough as a society to support single people?
That's a really good question. But, beyond the whole financial side of things, Specter also gets into, the emotional landscape of singlehood.
Right, and she uses a lot of her own personal experiences to do that.
Oh, totally. Remember that part where she describes having a really bad breakup and then she ends up, crying on an exercise bike at the gym?
Oh my gosh, yes. Surrounded by, all these super fit people.
I know. It's so relatable, though, right? That feeling of heartbreak. We've all been there.
Absolutely. We've all had those moments of just feeling raw and vulnerable. But I love how Specter actually connects that experience to, the science of heartbreak.
Oh, yeah. She talks about how it's basically a chemical withdrawal process in your brain. Your dopamine and oxytocin levels are all out of whack.
That's so interesting. I never thought about it that way before, but it makes so much sense. No wonder it feels so physically and emotionally draining.
Right. It's you're literally going through withdrawal. But, Specter doesn't just dwell on all the negative stuff.
Of course not. She's all about that positive spin.
She actually uses that, heartbreak experience as a way to talk about alonement.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets good.
Right. So alonement is this idea of choosing solitude, but in a really positive way. It's about using that time alone to learn more about yourself, to pursue things you love, and to just create a life that feels really authentic and fulfilling.
I love that word alonement. It just sounds so empowering, right? It's not about being lonely. It's about really owning that alone time and using it to grow.
And it's not about, shutting yourself off from the world either. Specter makes it clear that connection is still important.
Right, both with yourself and with other people.
Yeah, and speaking of connection, there's this one story she tells about meeting a Buddhist nun that really stuck with me.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
So the nun gives her this really simple analogy about holding a water bottle.
Okay.
And she basically says that, gripping the bottle really tightly takes effort.
Yeah.
And it creates tension. But if you just put the bottle down, you instantly feel relaxed.
I like that. I can see where this is going.
Right. And it's a metaphor for how we cling to things that aren't good for us, whether it's a past relationship or, a limiting belief. And that just creates suffering.
Wow, that's such a powerful image. Just letting go of what no longer serves you to make space for something new.
Exactly. And, speaking of new experiences, Specter also talks about the joys and challenges of solo travel. She actually went on a solo trip to Morocco for a whole month.
Seriously? A
Yeah.
whole month by herself.
I know, and she got all these warnings from people, like, oh, it's not safe, or you shouldn't do that
But
alone.
she did it anyway. That's so cool.
Right, like she just embraced that adventure and that independence.
It sounds like she really embodies that whole alonement spirit, like stepping outside of your comfort zone and being okay with the unknown.
Yeah, and she doesn't pretend it's always easy. Like, she does acknowledge that traveling solo takes some what she calls emotional labor.
Right, like navigating a new place by yourself can be tough.
Totally. But she also emphasizes how rewarding it can be. And, it ties back to that whole idea of alonement, like learning to rely on yourself and trust your intuition.
And, finding that inner strength that allows you to handle anything life throws at you, whether you're traveling alone or just facing everyday challenges.
And, while she does talk about how rewarding solo travel can be, it's not like she pretends it's always, sunshine and roses.
Yeah, she's pretty honest about the challenges, too.
Oh, yeah, she contrasts it with, like, the ease of traveling with a partner.
Right, you have someone to share all those decisions and, split the responsibility for directions and stuff.
Yeah. And there's this funny story she tells about how her friends, like, offered to come with her on a trip that she'd specifically planned as a solo adventure.
Oh, yeah. Like, they couldn't understand why anyone would want to travel alone.
Right. It's like they thought she must be so lonely or something.
It's funny how some people just can't grasp that concept.
Totally. But, she makes the point that those moments of solitude can be really powerful.
Oh, yeah, like when you're by yourself, you can really connect with yourself in a different way.
And on that note about connection, she also talks about how important friendships are for people who are single.
Oh, yeah, this was a really interesting section.
Yeah, it's not just like surface level stuff either. She really dives into the complexities of friendships as we all, go through different life stages.
Yeah, and like how friendships change as people get married, have kids, all that stuff.
She doesn't shy away from the challenges either.
Right. It can be hard when your friends' lives are changing and yours isn't or is changing in a different way.
Totally. And it takes effort to maintain those bonds when everyone's going through different transitions.
That's so true. It's not about like clinging to friendships that aren't working anymore.
Right. It's about recognizing that friendships naturally evolve.
And finding those people who really understand and support you.
Yeah. And sometimes that means like branching out and making new friends too.
Totally, like finding your tribe.
Exactly. Those people who just get it when it comes to being single.
Something I hadn't really thought about before reading this book was touch deprivation.
Oh, yeah, she talks about that.
It made me realize like how much we take for granted those little moments of physical contact.
Like just a hug from a friend or, cuddling up on the couch with someone.
Exactly. And when you're single, you might not get those things as often.
And it can actually have a real impact on your well-being.
Right. There's actual science behind it.
Yeah, she mentions some research showing that touch deprivation can be both physically and emotionally damaging.
It made me think about like how important it is to find healthy ways to get that physical connection.
Like massage or practicing self-care or even just being more intentional about platonic touch with friends.
It's just about taking care of yourself and making sure those needs are met.
Exactly. And I appreciate that she doesn't just, present the problem, but she actually offers solutions.
Right. It's about empowering people to take control of their own well-being.
And speaking of big life decisions, she also tackles the question of parenthood.
Which can be a really loaded topic for single women especially.
Totally. There's so much pressure from society to become a mother.
Especially as you get older.
Right. And she's really open about her own internal struggles with this question.
Yeah, she talks about exploring different options like sperm donation and co-parenting.
And it was really cool to read about all these women who are defying expectations and creating families that work for them.
It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to do things.
And she also doesn't shy away from the challenges of single parenthood either.
Right, like financially things can be much harder.
Yeah, single-parent households have significantly lower levels of wealth compared to dual-parent households.
It's a systemic issue that needs more attention, for sure.
Absolutely. Single parents are doing an amazing job, and they deserve a lot more support.
And one of the most powerful themes that runs throughout the book is this idea of embracing the nuances of singlehood.
Oh, yeah, like recognizing that it's not a monolithic experience.
There's no single right way to be single.
And it's about rejecting those societal pressures and expectations.
The idea that you're somehow incomplete or unhappy just because you're not in a relationship.
Right, or that you're constantly on the hunt for a partner when you might be perfectly content on your own.
It's about respecting individual choices and having honest conversations about what singlehood really looks like.
And she emphasizes that it's okay to have a range of emotions about it.
Right. There might be times when you feel joyful and independent.
But also times when you feel lonely or unsure or, you crave connection.
It's about being authentic, both with yourself and with others.
And recognizing that it's all part of the human experience.
It's like this book really challenges us to rethink how we view singlehood as a society.
Yeah, like all those deep-seated norms and expectations.
Right, we're so used to thinking of it as this like temporary state or even a failure somehow.
But Specter's like, no, it's not about that at all.
She wants us to look at it through a whole new lens.
Yeah, like what if instead of seeing it as a problem, we saw it as an opportunity?
Ooh, I like that.
Like a time for growth and self-discovery and even empowerment.
It's like totally flipping the script.
Right, and celebrating all the amazing things about being single.
Yeah, like owning your own story and deciding what happiness looks like for you.
And I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from this book, whether you're single or not.
Totally. It's like a reminder that everyone's on their own journey, and those journeys can look really different.
And that's something to celebrate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Alonement, what really stood out to you as the most impactful idea?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's that concept of alonement itself.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful way to reframe solitude.
It's not about being lonely. It's about being intentional with your time alone.
Right. And using that time to really get to know yourself and build a life that feels right for you.
And that's a skill we can all benefit from no matter what our relationship status is.
Absolutely. It's about building that inner strength and resilience.
And on that note, dear listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this exploration of alonement.
If any of these ideas resonated with you or you're just curious to learn more, we highly recommend checking out the book.
It's a really insightful and thought-provoking read.
And remember, whether you're embracing singlehood or navigating the ups and downs of relationships, the most important thing is to be true to yourself.
Create a life that brings you joy and fulfillment.
And never be afraid to define your own path.
That's a wrap on this episode of Book Decoded. Until next time, happy reading.